You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
This is Rod Mahood, your in-game voice of the Niagara IceDogs, and you're listening to the Dog Pound Podcast on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your podcast source for all game analysis, team interviews, and up-to-date news regarding the Niagara IceDogs.
Perlini! Overtime! IceDogs win! They score! Verhaeghe was also jamming away. It's a power play goal for the IceDogs. And they score! Hosang, first goal as an IceDog. Strome stops Shipley. Ritchie scores! Gets it to Akil Thomas. Thomas has the angle coming in. He scores!
Welcome into our Niagara IceDogs Dog Pound Podcast season finale episode right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Thank you to those that are tuned in live on the premiere on our Armchair GM Sports Network YouTube channel, and those who listen the next day or whenever you listen to this in your favorite on-demand audio platform. Where will Ethan Czata go in the upcoming NHL Draft? Jack Brauti possibly as well. We'll hear from Stephen Ellis of Daily Faceoff in the second part of today's show, going over the OHL prospects in the upcoming NHL entry draft and where he thinks some of the IceDog names and even going forward in the next season, Braidy, Wassilyn, Ryan Roobroeck, what their draft possibilities are like going forward. That'll be in segment 2 for you guys. In segment 1, we're going to hear from the owner of the Niagara IceDogs, Mr. Darren DeDobbelaer, on the recent changes within the organization. New head coach, new general manager are going to be coming into the organization. He's moving more towards a business position within the team as well, and GM Wes Consorti moved to a liaison role as well. If you guys want to get the full lowdown of that, we do have an episode where myself and Colin Ward from the OHL and 60 podcast talked about the whole organizational changes that's on demand on your favorite on-demand audio platform. Make sure to give us a follow on X at Dog Pound Podcast. They update it with all of our IceDogs coverage. And you can give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. So, Cam, this is it for us for this season. I'm looking forward to talking to Stephen Ellis in part 2 of today's episode. He's a great friend of ours and has some great draft insight that we'll hear about. But also, the IceDogs are close to hiring their general manager, which we're going to hear from the owner, Darren DeDobbelaer, shortly.
I think that's what everyone is, kind of waiting to hear in terms of, what's going on with the team. Obviously, just to recap quickly, the IceDogs, after missing the playoffs for so long, get to see our first playoff games. And he said it best. You're going to hear it in the interview, but I think expectations were met, not exceeded, and not missed. But they were just met, and I'm excited about the future as we discuss the upcoming really exciting next season for the IceDogs. Let's be honest with you.
Yeah, so they obviously made the playoffs, as we talked about, after they were eliminated by Barrie in 5 games, but they could have easily won 3 of those 5 games.
It's brutal, yeah.
And, some off-ice things that happened, and that's obviously something that led to the cultural review and why we're in this position with a new general manager and head coach. I did want to say before we get further to thank you to head coach Ben Boudreau for everything that he gave us as far as content this season on the show, Cam. He was a great guy to talk to away from the rink as well, and it'll be us getting to know another new coach here. But that's the thing behind the scenes is you don't really notice that, these guys don't have to give us their time, the players, the coaches, the management. But they choose to do it, and with us being there, for 9 months of the year, you get to know them a little bit away from the rink as well, and that they're people and have families, and they'll have to move on to other things. So I just wanted to quickly, I don't know if you had any quick words to say about the parting head coach and Ben Boudreau.
Oh, Ben was great. It was a blast to talk hockey and the team with him. He was always candid and gave us, the honest answers and things like that. It's a sad situation, and I wish him nothing but the best because he did in my opinion, did a good job with the players on the ice and got us back into the playoffs. But we're on to our next era in terms of the Ice Dogs.
Yeah, and you just want to be proud to be a Niagara IceDogs fan, and the fans watching and listening to this episode. Obviously, that has been something that they've been looking for the last 4 or 5 years, and we hear you and we understand. Going through another major change like this is not the easiest thing to do. And we talk about what the show topics are today. As I mentioned, Ethan Czata's draft hopes. Stephen Ellis is going to join us in segment 2. We're also going to talk about the many eyes on a 25-26 season with Ryan Roobroeck and Braidy Wassilyn as well in segment 2. And then we quickly touched on there. Going to have a new head coach and assistants. That is going to be something that the new general manager is going to be hiring with Darren DeDobbelaer's obviously end approval, but Darren's not going to be really making any decisions on the hockey side, which we saw when he came in. He named himself the general manager when he bought the team, and then they had that other situation happen where he was suspended as the general manager, which does end at June 1st as well. But I don't think Darren's going to be appointing himself as the general manager once again. So as we move forward here, Cam, we know that the GM hire is something that is going to be taking place very shortly, as you'll hear Darren DeDobbelaer talk about. You've heard possible names that have been floating around and some other names that went on elsewhere. But earlier in the offseason. But when you look at a new head coach and general manager coming in, Colin Ward talked about it a lot on the last show that we had about the cultural review, just making sure that the players are in a good headspace and they want to come to the rink every day. And a lot of the little things that added up this last season resulted in the Ice Dogs really taking a dive in that second half as well, not just performance-based, but you just want to make sure, and as we talk about the retention of players, that the guys want to stay in Niagara and they want to be a part of what is being built here. New head coach, new general manager, fresh look, and with a good young core here, if they keep it together with a few moves, like you could definitely see Niagara, making some noise here in the OHL once again.
100%. I think that this season, like I mentioned, that I think it is set up to be one of the most exciting in the last, decade for the Ice Dogs, simply based on, the national attention you're going to get from Roobroeck and Wassilyn in their draft year. And not to mention, the strides the team took. Now, obviously, every time the team is gone a step forward, there's always been something off the ice that has kind of dragged them back. And I think that when it comes to the coach and GM, personally, just experience, I think, at this point. I think that, again, we're going to hear from owner Darren DeDobbelaer and his thoughts on it. But that's what, as a fan, personally, like that would be what I would love to see, is just someone who has got a ton of experience and like you mentioned, building a culture that players can be proud of. The landscape of the OHL is changing. The CHL is changing. There is a fear that players can just go to college now. That is a real thing. And when you have these off-ice things, that's the danger of it. Like you could lose players that just, we're done. I can go play in college, and they've got to make sure they nip that in the butt this year. And it's, I would say, probably one of the most important years in the entire franchise's history. I don't know if that's being too grandiose, but when you consider that the team hadn't made the playoffs for 5 or 6 seasons before, it finally makes the playoffs, and then all that drama in the playoffs, you've got draft-eligible players. Kevin is the first drafted player. He breaks records for the team. Then you get Roobroeck. He breaks a goal scorer record. And you get Wassilyn, breaks the assist rookie record. Like, it's not like the Niagara IceDogs are a brand new franchise. They've got some pretty impressive alumni, and you've got a core of very young players that are shattering records and becoming the best of what the franchise has to offer. And you still have them. But this year has to hit on all cylinders, not just on the ice, off the ice, especially, in my opinion. Like, if they went 500 and they finished in 6th, but they were immaculate in the room, nothing in the press, nothing, no cultural review, no suspensions, none of that, that would probably go so much further than if they finished first and there was something that was, needed to be nipped in the butt again, because fans, I think, at a certain point are just like, if the product isn't going to, even if the product is amazing, it's, you don't want it to be embarrassing to be a fan. That's the most important thing. And I think that, again, if there are some really good things that we're gonna hear about, and obviously extremely interesting around everyone that follows the OHL, because the Ice Dogs are always under fire when it comes to that, and we're gonna get some insight on that in today's episode. So
yeah, and I think that was sort of what led to the nosedive in the second half of the season, was that they were kind of trying to keep everything together there, knowing that they had to clean up some things, and Darren DeDobbelaer talks about just the little things adding up, and it eventually, came to head in the playoffs, and we know what happened with that, with the players having to sit for a full period, and everything that went about it, you don't want to be covering that. You know what I mean? Like us coming on the show, we don't want to have to be talking about that sort of stuff, and you just want to make sure that they have a solid season, a solid core, and as you mentioned, moving forward in this NCAA landscape is going to be completely new for everybody, and it's going to be important that you put everything around the players that they want to remain within your program and not go off to college, in an earlier sense. So let's get to owner Darren DeDobbelaer on another installment of What's on DeDobbelaer's Radar. Talks about what's coming up for the GM hire, the coaching hire, and everything else regarding the franchise this last season.
What is on DeDobbelaer's radar?
Back on another installment of What's on DeDobbelaer's Radar with the owner of the Niagara IceDogs, Mr. Darren DeDobbelaer. Darren, thanks a lot for joining us. A season through ups and downs, and now that you guys been in the offseason for a few months, obviously we had some changes within the front office that were made over the last month or so. A new head coach, new coaching staff, new general manager, and new assigned role for West Consortia within the organization and for yourself as well in the business side. What would be your message to fans, first of all, about why these changes are paramount and why you think they're going to be positive for the organization moving forward?
You know what? First of all, thank you for having me on the show today. Secondly, we can always improve. We always realize, where we need to improve, and we need to improve on the ice and off the ice. So we had a lot of little issues this year, but too many of them. And I call it, death by 1,000 paper cuts. And there was nothing too severe, but stuff that just needed more, discipline, more attention to detail. And we want this to be the premier organization in the OHL. And Michelle and I are just committed to make sure that we are the number one. And if we have to continually make changes, we're committed to the region of Niagara, and we're committed to the OHL, and we're committed to all your listeners. We want to get this to the next level.
And you mentioned that you want this to be within your family for a long time, and that's something that is very important to you within the community, with some of the initiatives and some of the partnerships you've made in the community this year and on the business side as well for the arena. Why do you think that these changes will be different than maybe the last time you guys made changes within the coaching staff? 3 coaching changes since your time in 2022. Obviously, this one is going to be a little bit different. The league, having some cooperation within the decision for the coach and general manager. What gives you positivity that this is going to be different than the last few changes you've made in those departments?
I guess we're always learning. Ben was an outstanding coach. Dan and Mark were as well. But we needed a different look, maybe the first couple of coaches needed a little more experience. Ben had the experience. It's just all different reasons. And Brandon, we're just going to keep doing it until we get it right. So why do I think this is going to be right? The first coaches, GMs were basically appointed. Now we're just, it's been a month and I'm still interviewing GMs. So it's getting real close. I brought 6 in front of the OHL, and, our agreement was that, I was going to hire the GM with their approval. And, I really support the OHL, and all they really wanted to do was add value. They realized it's my business. They weren't telling me who to hire, or they weren't putting a GM in place for me. They just wanted to add value, and they've done an outstanding job in helping the search.
Going forward then, Darren, about that a little bit, it looks like possibly sometime in June you're going to be able to make those announcements, this being the season finale episode. This is kind of it for us in this season, but obviously you guys are going into an important NHL draft with Ethan Czata and possibly Jack Brauti and Blake Aerosmith as well, that have draft hopes and things like that. And as you get into the import draft, you want to have your management in place by then. How has the new NCAA agreement kind of changed things in your mind as far as not only recruitment for players, but also retaining and retention of players going forward now that you've started to see some guys commit at their 18, 19-year-old years? Does that change anything from your perspective on how quickly you have to build up a core and how much you have to do around them to want them to stay within your program?
Well, from Niagara's perspective, we realize it's changing. So, we can sign a 1-year player that's 19 now, where they wouldn't have signed before because they didn't want to ruin their NCAA eligibility. So now, instead of looking at trades and 16 and 17-year-olds, now we can just look at every player available, in our region, not Niagara region, but I mean in our drawing territory for the OHL. Secondly, Niagara doesn't have a USA scout. We were just kind of handling that ourselves. Now there's a major need for a USA scout. You see in the last draft that just went by 6 weeks ago, there was 81 U.S. players selected as opposed to 30 the year before. So the landscape's changing, and we need to change with the times. Hockey's changing, and again, we just need to change so we can continue to be competitive. As for retaining players, we just have to show them that the OHL is the best development tool, quickest way, best way to get to the NHL. And we've proven that statistics-wise as a league. So we just need to keep pounding that in their head, but we need to make their experience second to none. And with our region and our facility and our dressing room, I think that we got a head start on that. Now we just have to, bring them a winning culture.
So what would be, I guess, your to-do list for the new general manager that comes in sometime in June? Obviously, getting your draft picks to commit, Caden Bell and Ryerson Edgar, your top 2 picks that you took in this just recent OHL priority selection. But what are you kind of looking for as far as when he gets in this job? You're going to have to make a few moves because you know that the next 2 years for this team are very exciting and the window is definitely open after you really didn't make a lot of moves at the trade deadline, knowing that you had a bright future ahead with your young core with Roobroeck and Wassilyn, Czata. What are the top priorities that you're going to want this general manager to do once he takes the seat?
Well, the first thing that I want him to do, if you do like a 30, 60-day plan, the first thing I want him to do is connect with the players, the agents, and our stakeholders, Mayor Cisco, our major sponsors, all of our sponsors, and just try to show that he's in the community. The general manager that I basically know who it is already, Brandon, but I don't want to announce anything till after Memorial Cup, not to take any shine away from that. He is relocating to the Niagara region. That's another thing that was pretty important to me, is someone that, boots on the ground and be there all the time. And then, of course, we've got good depth with Hayden Jeffries, Matthew Humphreys, Finn Moffat, but Flores is going to be pretty tough to replace, but we're on the right track there. So, that's another major milestone for him, I guess, the words I'm looking for, in the next 60 days. So to make sure 30-day, 60-day plan. So.
And then for the head coach that you're going to be bringing in, is that, I have kind of a two-parter, is that going to be collaboration with the general manager, or are you making that determination on your own?
Nope, that's going to be the general manager's decision with my approval. Okay. So, if he wants to bring in, someone that, just doesn't, fit with the organization, whatever. It's going to be his hire because he has to work with him. But with my approval, but 99% it's going to be his hire.
And then kind of follow up to that, so trying to build off of what you guys had this past season, making the playoffs for the first time since the 2018-19 season, you'd call that a success, but obviously, as you mentioned, too many little things behind the scenes that you wanted to clean up in that sense, so there was good and bad with having your first playoff run. Since then, you got 2 home playoff games, Darren. As far as making sure that the fans got a little taste of it, but knowing that they want more of it going forward the next 2 seasons, what are you hoping to see from the new head coach, the coaching staff, to make sure that team gets back to the playoffs and has sustained success within the playoffs for the fan base that's been just dying for it the last 5 years?
I think that we need to always develop. I truly believe that every league's a development league till you get to the NHL, and that's what the agents want. That's what the players want. We want to win but develop at the same time. So that's a fine line we need to turn to our bench. I don't want to say that the season past was a success. I don't want to say that on the ice. I think that finishing in 7th and going out in 5 games was, I would say, meeting expectations. It wasn't exceeding expectations, and it wasn't below expectations. I believe with the players we had, that was the bare minimum that we had to do. So I think there's a lot more in these guys. I think there's a lot more in this team that I think we can make a run this year.
And then lastly for you, Darren, and we appreciate your time today. You look at it, 13th in attendance this season, 3603. Attendance across the league and sports in general has taken a hit with the state of the climate financially and things like that. So as far as what you're looking for going into next season, you've got some exciting partnerships. Your marketing team is building, with the Carlsberg Lounge and Performance Auto as well, coming on board with some exciting things. Is this sort of an early gear up for a possible bid for the 2027 Memorial Cup? I know you don't want to put the cart before the horse and you want to make sure you compete for this season, but is that something that's in your mind, knowing that there are other teams like Kitchener and Sault Ste. Marie that might also be wanting to get in on that bid for the next time it goes back here to Ontario, which you went for back in 2023?
Yeah, we do. I think that we have a lot better team to bid for the Memorial Cup from an on-ice perspective. We learned a couple of things in our bid that we maybe missed on, that we can improve on. So I think the fact that we didn't get the first one, but it's going to educate us on how to get the next one. From an attendance point of view, it is low. I believe that we're one of the most reasonable, if not one of the cheaper venues in the OHL. I still think 2 tickets, $25. I think it's a real cheap night out, a cheap night of entertainment. We're trying to make it more of an entertainment, not just about the hockey game. And I think everyone in the office has done a great job at doing that. We're trying to add more entertainment features to the game to make it, not just about the hockey game. Attendance wise can always get better. It's more fun to play in front of a full crowd. We've sold 1,100 season tickets already for next year, so that's outstanding. But we need to educate our season ticket holders on, if you're not going to the game, give them to your neighbor. We don't want to see empty seats. We want that atmosphere. So, if you're not going to the game, give the tickets to your neighbor. Give them to a kid. Give them to the mailman. Give them to somebody so that we don't have seats sitting there empty. So we're 1,100 season ticket renewals already, which is quite a bit higher than where we were at this point last year. So I think the buzz is there and the excitement's there, and the support is definitely there from our sponsors and our fans. So we appreciate that. But again, at 3,600, Brandon, we got 1,500 empty seats, so that's too many.
Yeah, absolutely, and we saw in the playoffs that number is always in an uptick when people are excited to see the prospects of what this team could do, especially coming into the next 2 years. So the owner of the Niagara IceDogs, Darren DeDobbelaer. Darren, thanks a lot for joining us today. Best of luck with the coaching search. I know the GM search is basically done, but anything can't be announced until after the Memorial Cup, so look forward to that announcement. Exciting changes are made this offseason to improve the hockey club and seeing them hit the ice for the first time in training camp in August.
Good stuff. Appreciate your support. Thanks for having me.
So there was owner Darren DeDobbelaer on another segment of What's on DeDobbelaer's Radar. Cam, he was very honest, took a lot of accountability for some things that happened this season. Talked about death by 1,000 paper cuts are his words that he used. Said they can always improve on and off the ice, and little issues. They're always learning, and they're going to keep doing it until they get it right. That was kind of my main takeaway from it, but we've got a lot to discuss there.
No, and I'll be honest with you. Going into listening to that interview, I didn't really think there was anything he could say to alleviate all of the concerns that, again, as a fan, not just someone covering the team, but as a fan of the Ice Dogs. And I'll be honest with you, after hearing him talk about the issues and the process of what's going on, I feel a little bit better about the team's future. So the things that I kind of wanted to focus on is, number one, hiring a GM. Obviously, that's going to be very important, and it's going to be done not with the OHL saying, here's a general manager, this is who you need to implement, because I don't think that would ever work, because then you've got friction between the owner and the GM if they don't, it isn't the owner. If you own something and you were told this is the person who has to run your business, and you don't get, if you're not in lockstep or have of the same mindset, right? Like that probably isn't set up for success. But nonetheless, it's with the OHL's guidance. So, you've got some prospects of who you want to put, and the OHL basically giving their stamp of approval, like, this is a good idea. And I think that is what the that was what the team needs, I think. So it'll be very interesting to see who is the general manager. And I think that is a good thing. You mentioned how he was the general manager in the first season. He did everything in his power to try and get the Memorial Cup bid, and that included making a trade every day. And even last year, I think there were some strides Weston sort of did. We talked about the trade deadline show, and Colin, when he hopped on and his show as well, he mentioned it during it. The win was the trade deadline, nothing happening, not trading away players that were doing well like Lashko, and just keeping things status quo. And so there were lessons learned, but getting a GM, the bigger thing that made me feel a little bit more confident is that he said that the coaching hire is the GM's decision, and that is extremely important. And I couldn't agree more. Because I think that a GM and a coach working together is extremely important for this franchise. And I think that's I like that is how it appears it's going to go. We don't know, but like that's what he's going into this offseason with the thought process of we'll get the GM gets the coach. And, he's obviously, you said 99% the GM, 1% him. And obviously you're the business owner. You should get final say. But I think that's a big positive. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, on just the GM and the coaching situation.
Yeah, I mean, he said it's coming after the Memorial Cup end, so that brought up some rumors about who could possibly it be. Again, we don't have confirmation on who it is. We have some names floating around the Twitterverse there, which is always a fun time and a fun rabbit hole to get into. But it sounds like it's going to be somebody with experience, coming from a good program, and as Darren mentioned, he's going to be relocating to Niagara. He's going to be here on boots on the ground here every day, and that's just not what they had done. Still being in Brantford, Darren and Wes Consorti over there, the general manager, who's now going to be sort of a bridge, a liaison between the management and Darren. Anybody that thinks the owner of the Ice Dogs is not going to be able to have last say and final stamp on approval, you're foolish, because that's every owner.
That's
in
silly.
Ontario hockey.
Yeah, that's silly. If you were an owner, you own something, like to basically just sit there and say, yeah, I'm the owner, but I don't have. Yeah, I mean, like that's silly to think.
But to sort of be more hands off and not trying to get involved in the day to day, which he's said that he doesn't want to be part of that, but felt like he had to at certain points with when he was the general manager and things like that. But again, letting the coach, letting the general manager be the general manager with the league's cooperation. He said he brought 6 names to the Ontario Hockey League and said, what do you guys think of this? And that's sort of he said he's made his choice there. But it seems like with the league's cooperation, he said like they weren't trying to tell him who to hire; they were just trying to add value. And
which is huge. That I think that, like I said, like that gave me some promise in that, like to hear that's how it went. Because like I said, if the OHL said here's your general manager, I don't think that's set up for success. Because you know what I mean. What if the GM isn't the right fit and you're just stuck and, he doesn't see eye to eye with essentially your boss. Like, it's can be a very messy situation. But I do like how, given what happened, that the OHL being like, yeah, this is probably a good hire. I think that's a positive. I think that's positive. So it'll be very interesting to see how that all plays out. Obviously, all eyes are going to be on the Ice Dogs once the Memorial Cup's done in terms of the OHL, because that needs to get resolved immediately. The 30 to 60 days in terms of like where what's on his checklist for it. I love that he brought up goaltending, because I think that is, if this year for the Ice Dogs is going to be, one of the most important piece now in terms of roster construction is 100% replacing Flores, because they have enough horses up front. The D-Corps, again, needs some love as well, because they gave up the most goals in the Eastern Conference, and I believe the OHL last year, and it's been a few years of doing that. So that needs to get fixed as well. But they do have some strong pieces on the back end, and they got to figure out a goaltender. So I'm curious to see what they do there, because obviously that's going to come from, I mean, he brought up Finn Moffitt and Humphreys, but he said that we need, something else as well, which is really interesting, because that means that they're going to have to go and get them from outside the organization.
Yeah, and it seems like he said he wanted the players to connect, or he wanted the GM to connect with the players, knows that the NHL draft's coming up, the import draft, so they've got some some big events coming up where they need to have everything sort of in order, and then when you want to make off-season trades and things like that, like they're not going to run back the same group here. So obviously some changes are going to be made in that department. He talked about 2027. They're going to try to bid for the Memorial Cup. They've learned some things in the last time that they went through the process. And again, for the CHL to want to bring a big event here to Niagara, taking nothing away from the region part of it, but everything has to be stable with the team that's going to be hosting it. You want to make sure, and that just was not the case the last time that they had gone for it. Their team's going to hopefully be more competitive, and they, we'll see what happens in that's 2 years from now. But we know that the selection process takes place the year before, so we'll probably see some CHL people within the Meridian Center at some point when they start to go through the bidding process. But you knew that when they didn't do anything at the trade deadline, Cam, that this year and next year were going to be very important, and now more so than ever with the NCAA eligibility and players being able to leave earlier. These 2 years are going to be very important for the Ice Dogs franchise moving forward, for them to be able to keep those players to have that window for 2 years.
It's a scary time because, again, not just for the Ice Dogs, it's for the CHL, because you could have just two and done, essentially. Like, we haven't seen the full impact. It's going to take about 5 years before players, agents, GMs, everyone has figured out what the actual normal process is for the NCAA and CHL kind of marriage here, right? Like, we're not going to see what is to be expected. We already saw Malcolm Spence, who's a first-round talent, basically already commit to going to school. Like 2 years ago, that was never a thing, and he would just be back with Erie or with his NHL team, and so the landscape is going to change so dramatically. And what's scary is, for a team that has a lot of off-ice issues, if that does not get solved immediately, this month, you're going to have players that the Ice Dogs can develop and do everything that they can to get all these great players. The scouting could do everything and find Kevin He in the second round, you know what I mean? And all of this, and it won't matter because in 2 years they could just go play college. And they've got to figure that out because they have such a good opportunity because of their proximity to the border and where they're located, and the fact that they have a fantastic arena. And when the building is full, it's awesome. It's so easy to see a Memorial Cup here. And I don't mean to be biased, but like, if you were to come and you took all the off-ice stuff away and the team, let's say, was a top 4 team in the league, it like just easily is a marriage for the Memorial Cup, right? But the problem is that there's a lot of negatives that come with the Ice Dogs in terms of optics and whatnot. And if that can be solved, like, it's just so easy in terms of, the setup and where they're located and the hotel situation around and everything else that comes with the Memorial Cup bid. Like, it's just so easy to see that the Ice Dogs could host it.
So we kind of look at what the lineup's going to look like, and I asked him about, making sure that they get their players to commit as well. We know that first-round pick Ryerson Edgar and third-round pick Caden Bell still have not signed up until this point, although Bell was there during draft weekend. Making sure that they can get their first-round pick signed is going to probably be, priority number one for the GM, which the Ice Dogs have done well since the Sam Dickinson situation. They've gotten their top guys to report, other than that when it was going through the ownership change from the Burks to the DeDobbelaers. They've done a good job in that, but you need to see, the off-ice stuff improve if you want to have stuff like that get taken care of right away, and you're not going into June where you're still trying to pencil in what the lineup's going to be like, because you're losing a top center in Loshko, you're losing a top defenseman in Van Vliet, you're losing your number one goalie in Flores. So there's a lot of question marks as far as what this team can be on the ice, but I think the off-ice morale and the camaraderie within the guys, I think, is something that the new GM and the new head coach is going to have to come in there and make sure that is priority number one.
No, 100%. I agree. I think that's why I said I hope that whoever is chosen for the coach and GM job is a veteran. It needs to be, adult in the room, I guess would be a way to describe it. It needs to be someone that has a lot of experience in both roles, or it's just, I honestly thought that we would see Ben and his staff here for 5-10 years, depending on, the success. But, we're going through it again. And I hope that this time it's, again, not, it is extremely stable.
And the last thing you mentioned was the 1,100 season ticket holders. Obviously, talked about wanting to get the building more full, making sure people are giving their tickets away to other people that can go to the games. We saw it in the playoffs, Cam. We only got a small taste with the 2 playoff games, but the buzz was there. It wasn't quite 5,300 like we've seen, them in the past with deep playoff runs before. But getting the buzz back in the building and getting the fans back in love with this region's team is something that we've been talking about needing to happen the last couple of years. We saw the attendance have an uptick in the second half of the season once people knew that it was a playoff team, and then they went through the rough stretch there with a 13-game losing streak before beating London, which, as you mentioned, just felt like winning the OHL championship at times. But encouraging stats there already. 3,600 average attendance of 13th. I think with Roobroeck and Czata and Kevin He and Wassilyn, I expect if everything goes right with these hires and the offseason, that we should see an uptick in that department as well.
I think just because the team is going to have, they were in the playoffs, the casual fan is what you need to attract. And the casual fan now, they were there in the playoffs. They might not follow the team regularly, but it's also a great night out. As someone who lives very close, and that is how I ended up meeting you. It is a phenomenal experience there, and I like that their ideas of trying to make it just more than about the hockey, but it is such a easy way to have a great night out at the Meridian Center, and I hope to see more people out there. But obviously, the on ice support. First off, again, got to get out of your own way off ice, but on ice the product has improved tenfold, and this year it should be even better. I would think. Hoping it would be a crazy scenario if it wasn't the case, but nonetheless, I'm excited for this season. I think it's like I said, it is. If there was a more important season for the Ice Dogs, I don't remember it. I can't think of one.
Yeah, so final thoughts here as we go before we hit to Stephen Ellis in the second segment today. 7th place in the conference. Darren DeDobbelaer talked about that just meeting expectations, but not something that they were necessarily proud of as far as that was what they were striving for. They wanted more. So as we hit in the offseason, Cam, like what are you thinking here as we hopefully come back in late August, early September, and get ramped up for another season here with a lot of promise, but final thoughts here as we go into the offseason, the draft, and everything that's going to happen with offseason moves.
Well, if we went back and listened to our show, we said this a number of times during the losing streak. We went back and listened to our show at the beginning of the season. If they made the playoffs, that's a massive win. The problem was that they were first in the Eastern Conference for the half of the season. Expectations changed, and then they just kind of fell so flat that it felt like a lost season. That was and then what happened during the series against Barrie was just obviously brutal, and hopefully a learning experience, not just for the coaches, the players too. And with that being said, I think he said it perfectly. They just met expectations, didn't exceed it, didn't miss them, and I think that was a perfect synopsis of how it went. This season, my expectations is a round or two, a couple rounds. If they don't make the second round, they're in a lot of trouble, man. Because like I said, we talked about this. They have 2 years essentially. 2 years here, and then it's rebuilding again. And with the new rules, if things aren't really, really tied down and everything's buttoned up, it's going to be awfully tough and obviously scary hearing about the the prospects not signing and whatnot. So we'll hopefully get that sorted out when the new GM comes in, and we'll be off and running. But I would hope that they challenge for the division. And I don't mean just for the first half of the season. I mean, last week of the season, they're challenging for the division.
The one thing is they don't have a lot of picks, so you'd assume that they're going to have to change some roster players.
I don't. Like I said, the general manager's got a tough. If that means, I don't even know. I don't. What I mean? Is that Kevin for 4 locks, rock solid players? I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. So
yeah, we don't want to start speculating on trades, but again, when they. The draft cupboard, definitely the new GM has his work cut out for him with a solid core, but you have to make the right moves around to make sure that this thing's going to be still on the rails going forward. But we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back. We're going to hear from Daily Faceoff Stephen Ellis about the upcoming NHL Draft, Ethan Czata's draft prospects, as well as Ryan Roobroeck and Braidy Wassilyn the year after, and as well a little bit on the OHL side of things. So stay right here. We're right back on the Dog Pound Podcast in our season finale episode right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family in all 4 of their great Niagara region locations. We'll be right back after this.
Pets bring immense joy to our homes, becoming an integral part of our families. But this living, loving experience often requires a little extra care and attention. That's where Global Pet Foods comes in, with owners and staff ready to support you every step of the way. Check out one of their locations today: 3643 Portage Road in Niagara Falls, 160 Highway 20 in Font Hill, or 400 Scott Street and 344 Glendale Avenue in St. Catharines. Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family. Proud to sponsor the Dog Pound Podcast, the official podcast of the Niagara IceDogs.
Are you currently looking for work in the Niagara region? If so, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thorold Stone Road in Niagara Falls. Their many free services include a fully staffed resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment, training, and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, and Better Jobs Ontario information and registration assistance. Check out their website at ehc.on.ca or call 905-358-0021 for more information. The Niagara Employment Help Center, helping people find work since 1983.
This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario. Wild Bill's Auto Repair is your local center for auto maintenance and repair in the Niagara region. Since 2012, Wild Bill's Auto Repair and Body Shop has been helping customers stay safe and confident on the road, knowing their vehicles in top running condition through their services. Located at 7868 Oakwood Drive in Niagara Falls, the garage started as a tribute to the owner's father, William Robert Hunter, who passed away, continuing the same community spirit and high level of service which customers came to expect from him back at Hunter's Auto Repair. Their multi-award-winning auto shop has earned the trust of the Niagara community with its fair treatment of all customers, who can feel confident they'll get the trustworthy advice and repairs during their visit. Their experienced crew loves meeting new people and looks forward to forming a lasting partnership for the care of your cars. To find out more or to book service, contact them today, 905-358-7868 or wildbillsauto.ca. Wild Bill's Auto Repair, helping customers stay safe and confident on the road since 2012.
Celebrating a birthday, wedding, graduation, or just watching the big game, Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano is there to satisfy your pizza needs. Serving handmade Italian pizzas created with the freshest, top-quality ingredients, loaded subs, and their famous chicken wings. Platinum Award recipients of Community Votes Niagara for Best Pizza and Wings in all of the Niagara region 3 years running. Open 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week from their brand new location at 7156 Drummond Road in Niagara Falls. All payment options accepted to fit your convenience. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery. Place your order today at 905-374-4400 or check out their online menu for the best quality pizza and wing combos you'll find in Niagara at carmine'spizzeria.ca. You've tried the rest, why not try the best? Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, proudly serving the Niagara community since 2013.
This is Kevin He.
This is Braidy Wassilyn.
This is Ethan Czata.
This is Andre Loshko.
It's Owen Flores.
This is the Dog Pound Podcast.
The official podcast of the Niagara IceDogs.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's Dog Pound Podcast season finale episode right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Thank you to everybody that's tuned live on our YouTube channel with this premiering live, as well those listening later on your favorite on-demand audio platform. Braidy, Caputo, and Cam Halbert are back with you, and we are pleased to be joined now by a special guest, Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff. Does great draft analysis, great draft coverage. You had him on the season finale episode last season as well, previewing some of the OHL Draft eligibles as well as some Niagara IceDogs to look forward to in June's NHL entry draft. Stephen, thanks a lot for joining us today. Always great to have you on to talk about the prospects, because you're there watching more film and tape than I think anybody in the league. So always appreciate the time and look forward to this.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys bringing me on here.
Yeah, I'll try not to have any NASCAR talk with you, Stephen, because we could have a whole podcast on that. But regardless, we start off here with, obviously, Ethan Czata is a guy that has risen up the red draft boards and draft rankings since the season started. At the beginning of the year, Stephen, he was sort of like a 7th round grade, skyrocketed up in the mid-season rankings, and on NHL Central Scouting, he's currently ranked 49th in the final rankings, 55 points in 68 games after, in his second season. You have him ranked number 56 on your board. What did you see from Ethan Czata, and where do you think his name could be called in June's entry draft?
I think anywhere really. Like I got him late in the second round. I wouldn't be surprised if he fell even to the fourth round, and I think he'd be good value if he fell there. And part of that is because you look at the skating and what a great skater he is. He's shifty. He's got a good acceleration there. He could turn quickly, like with the puck. Like he does a lot right there. I like his two-way game. I think he's really good play reader. Like the thing about him was there's a lot of players who will make passes for the sake of just getting the puck somewhere, but for him, it feels like he will sometimes hold on to the puck a bit too long, and sometimes it hurts him, but other times it's to try and draw guys to him and then maybe make the right pass. He's looking for the right pass more than just a pass, which is something you really appreciate there. So he's a good playmaker there. I think he's also got a really good shot. I wish he would use it a bit more, but you still look at this year, some solid numbers in the OHL. He didn't get to really show himself at the Hlinka Gretzky at the start of the year. I thought he was a lot more impactful in kind of that bottom six role he played at the U18s. I think with him, you're looking at a guy who is probably, if he makes the NHL, it's more of a bottom six role, but he'd be a good bottom six player because he brings that energy. He's smart. He can get himself out of trouble. And you put that together, I really like it. Like, I wish he'd be a bit more physical, but overall, I think that this is a guy that when he gets the puck on his stick, he's often making the right play.
There's something that like we saw over the last 2 years of him being on the Ice Dogs is that while there are times where he doesn't lay the body, but he does show a tendency to like drop the gloves, stick up for his teammates. When it comes to like draft prospects and things like that, do you find that in today's game, or at least in the last few years, that will increase your stock in the draft, or does it really not matter at all? And it's basically just skating, shot, and playmaking ability. Like, does that still add value like it used to 20 years ago?
Scouts are looking a lot more at the skating and the hockey sense. If you can put those two things together, like Brady Martin is a perfect example of a guy who can hit, no question about it, and I bet he will fight. But I remember in his OHL draft year, he was probably one of the most skilled players at the U16 level. Like he was just pulling off moves that nobody else could do. But he eventually learned he had to be more of an everyday player. And you watch what he's able to do with the Sioux Greyhounds, and especially with Canada at the under 18s, a guy that he wanted to go out there and make noise. And when you look at Czata, it's like he's got the physical elements. That's not a negative. That's the thing. Like it's definitely a positive. It's not a negative. It's whether or not that's going to be super valuable is the question. Like if you're going to be a bottom six player, you got to be smart. You got to be able to skate, and you also need to be very reliable defensively. If you put those three together, that's going to be fine. Then you've got his hockey sense is what creates so many of his great plays, and you put that together. I do think he's going to be a good bottom six player, but I don't know how impactful the physicality side of it's going to be, but it's not a bad thing to have.
And he's an underrated agitator, Steven, because when you watch games of him, he knows how to kind of take an extra little bit of somebody, or hold the stick, and he just has that knack for getting under the other player's skin with legally, I guess is the word I'm looking for. He's won 3 gold medals playing for Team Canada's U18 and Gretzky Hlinka. He played at the OHL Top Prospects game. So he's been around. He's a top 5 pick in the OHL draft, and when they drafted him, they said that he's a guy that just is in plain sight all year. You know what you're going to get from Ethan Czata day in and day out. Do you think that his style is more encouraging for teams that want to play hard in the playoffs? Like you look at what the Florida Panthers are doing. Like, do you think that his play style is kind of geared more towards the playoffs, not necessarily putting up a ton of points and having those flashy plays?
I think so. Because I think when you watch the way he plays, again, it's high energy all the time. He's got that two-way game. He's got a good shot. He's like, you put all those things together, and I do see someone who like teams are looking for at that point. You're not going to be getting a top line player in the second, third, or fourth round of the draft. You're looking for guys who you hope will be NHLers, whether it be more of a depth role or more of just a support guy. And I think that's where he comes into the play here. And it's like, okay, he's not going to be a top line player, but he's really good at being a bottom six player in situations like playing for Team Canada, where he gets into that role. Like obviously a bit more of an important role with Niagara, but when he gets put on these all-star teams, he really looks good in the roles he's given, which is usually deeper down. And that's because he's got that energy. He's got that ability to just attack guys all the time. So I really think that this is a guy that teams should be very excited about. And that's why I got him as a second round player, because he might not be the flashiest. He might not be explosive offensively, but he's got a lot of the traits teams are looking for.
Last year we had our first drafted player in Kevin He in quite some time. He fell to the fourth round and went to the Winnipeg Jets. Do you think that this season he came out with such a hot start, but kind of fizzled off near the end? And I'm not sure if that had something to coincide with, just the losing streak and the Ice Dogs looking kind of tiring out near the end of the year. But did he improve his stock? Did it go down? Did it stay the same? What do you think in terms of Kevin He's development, and is there a chance that he could, be up into the AHL and NHL sooner rather than later?
He's a very interesting prospect. The Jets have a lot of really good young guys.
They love the OHL.
Yeah, they know what they're doing there. And that's one thing he's kind of got advantage of is they have a lot of centers, and he's a winger. So that is something where it might actually help him in kind of going up the system there. For me, the big thing of watching him play this year was seeing a guy who can play bigger in more important moments. Because he had 31 goals last year, but he was doing it on a team that wasn't getting all the wins, and they weren't a super high-end team. So he was going out there and getting goals that were just not as important. But as the team got better this year and he took on that leadership role, we saw a guy who was still scoring, even better of a playmaker. The speed's still there. So there's a lot of stuff there that can make him a middle six player. And I'd like to see him, add a bit more muscle to his game, because I know when you've got that speed, it'd be really cool to go see him go and just knock guys down. And he's not a small guy, but it feels like I want him to see him get a little physically stronger and use that to his ability. But watching what he's able to do with the puck and what he's able to do with the speed, there's a lot to like there. And he's easily one of the most improved prospects in this past year's draft, because he was taken over he's
in the fourth round. I think.
What an absolute find in the fourth round. Already one of the most improved players.
Yeah, and when he gets going, he's like a fast train. He's hard to stop, and he can lay some big hits when he's at full speed. One of the fastest players, as you know, in the OHL. Steven, as we kind of move on from Ethan Czata, and I do think that his penalty killing is something that improved this year. That I think scouts, to Cam's question, really. Scouts saw this year that he was, used in all situations. But turning the page here a little bit, Steven, to another draft-eligible player for the Ice Dogs is Jack Brauti. This is his second time into the draft as a +1 draftee. When you look at it, number 139 on North America's Central Scouting rankings, possibly a round 5, round 6 type guy they have him projected as. What would you think that you'd have to see to have Jack Brauti's name, defenseman from the Niagara IceDogs, have his name called in June?
I think scouts would love if he was a bit bigger, but what we really saw at the Buffalo Prospect Challenge when he played for Boston was he was a free agent invite to that draft. He wasn't one of the top prospects, but he was one of their better players. And that's what really opened my eyes to him. Okay, that was a lot better than I remember watching him play in the OHL. And he's a really good puck handler, a much better, more improved puck handler, I should say, because that was a thing that felt like was kind of a weak point of him in his draft year. The hockey sense is there. He's a good skater. I know scouts would just wish he was a bit bigger, but I think you've got a lot of those raw tools where you can probably be patient with him and still be happy, because, maybe he's more of a shutdown defender in the NHL. Again, you probably want someone with a bit more size, but I do think he's got that offensive skill that really could translate to him being a bit more underrated in a sense there. So there's nothing about his game that stands out to a point where, he's definitely an NHL draft pick, but there's enough into his game where if he gets drafted, I think the team would be taking making a smart move, whether it be 5th, 6th, 7th round, because there's a lot of upside in a lot of those traits of his game. Would it be his hockey sense, his shot, his ability to skate really well at both ends of the ice? So there is a lot to like. Whether he gets drafted, I guess, is a question for NHL scouts, but I do think that there's a lot of elements there to like.
After a few, rough years for the Ice Dogs, are finally back into the playoffs, and you're starting to see kind of their core get the highlight and the notice. And next year is really kind of the pinnacle of it. We had Kevin he get drafted last year. Czata is definitely going to be potential to go higher in the draft than Kevin did, which I don't think any of us saw coming into this year. But that being said, a fantastic year by Czata. But now going into next year, Ryan Roobroeck, who has been on NHL prospect radars for, ever since he came into the OHL, as well as the Niagara's first round pick last year, and Braidy Wassilyn, who had a great rookie season in the OHL. Both of them seem to have really high ceilings. Would you be able to just give us what the ceiling on both of those players and what the floor could be, like where you would see the absolute, what would have to go really wrong for them to not really hit their stride in their draft year?
For Roobroeck, I'd be shocked if he's not a top 10 pick next year. Like, that's a guy that has everything teams are looking for: an outstanding shot, great offensive IQ. He's got the big frame, and we watched him at the U18s where he was basically that net front presence, and no one could knock him out. And especially on the power play, he was a great guy in front of the net, screening everybody, doing just so much that you're looking for. Like, his off puck game has come a long way. I remember watching him when he was, I think it was like 14 or 15 in his draft, OHL draft minus 1 year. So he was trying to go for exceptional status, didn't end up getting it. But he looked so physically dominant, no one could keep up. The year after, it felt like he took a step back. While the numbers were great, it felt like he was too good for that level. I think whether or not he should have gone to the OHL yearly, I guess it's up to the Canadian Hockey League and everything.
It was Michael Meese's fault.
But yeah. Misa basically was not going to get it until he had that dominant OHL Cup final, OHL Cup, I should say. But with Roobroeck, like last year, he showed, okay, yeah, he was damn good, and he's got that size without going out and getting himself in trouble, and he can knock guys down if he needs to, but that's not his game. Like, he's got a lot of skill to his game, and you put that all together, and I would be shocked if he's not a top 10 pick. Like, he would probably be a top 10 pick in this year's draft too. But I think for his sake, he's probably happy that he gets that extra year of development to maybe push himself higher up. When it comes to Wassilyn, I think a really good playmaker. Remember watching him, he was one of those guys everyone was talking about as a top forward from the OHL Draft 24. I liked him in the OJHL. I know he didn't get a lot of points, but I thought he brought a lot of good energy and made that team more dangerous in those couple games he played. So we're waiting for him to kind of get that big offensive breakout. But I think that even watching him play as part of Canada's selection camp for the U18s, obviously he didn't make the team. We saw a guy who was just really good at just getting the breakout started. And it was just drills and stuff like that, but he was getting the pass everywhere he wanted it all the time. And very few guys were able to do that. So I'd like to see him kind of to continue to improve that goal scoring ability. But right now, I think he's at a good point here where we're still talking about a first round pick.
Yeah. Would a good comp, sorry, before I forget, would a good comp, because of Roobroeck's late birthday and getting the extra year in the OHL for his draft, would a good comp be like Porter Martone this year?
Yeah, I could see that, because like with Martone,
both big.
Yeah, like Martone was a big goal scorer pretty quickly into his career when he started with Peterborough and then Mississauga and Brampton. And I think within that situation there, like, yeah, that's a good case there. Like, both like to play a bit on the edge from time to time. I think Martone hits that edge a bit more than Roobroeck, but Roobroeck also is just a bit more of a finesse player too. Like, I think I mentioned it last year. I saw him score like one of the coolest empty net goals I've ever seen, where he scored from his own zone. It was a bar down shot. Like, that's cool. That's pretty cool. So there's a ton of talent there, and it'd be interesting to see if he's in the running for Canada's World Junior team, because
that's what my next question was.
Like, we'll see. Like, I'd assume he's gonna be part of that World Junior Summer Showcase team. We'll see from there. Like, there's the thing about Canada is obviously a lot could change, and
you can't mess around.
They're not bringing Dave Cameron back. No. But like with them, you can look at it and say, okay, well, like there's a situation where he could probably be a good 13th forward for that team, or even a fourth liner, but they've got a lot more skill. So as long as they don't have a bunch of guys going to the NHL, and I don't think they will. Like, I don't think Schaefer's in the NHL next year. I don't think Martone's in the NHL next year. Like, those guys can come back. I think Canada should be in a really strong team there. So he might be knocked out because of that. But I do think that Roobroeck has also got this situation here where he could be in the NHL right after he's drafted. He might be one of those guys where if he's not taking the top 5, like he could take 6th or 7th, but still be ready to go to the NHL because he's got that size, he's got the footwork,
and he's older.
Yeah, he's got that older age. Yeah. I think there's a lot of value there. So, like he should be in Hockey Canada's radar, no question about it. It's a tough team to make next year. Like, we say that I feel like every year, and Canada probably should have done a lot better with the right coaching staff this past year, but it's a story for a different day.
Yeah, he had 8 points in the 4 round robin games for Canada. I think that's a pretty good showing for him there at the U18s. And you mentioned, just Wassilyn and Roobroeck taking a step forward. Wassilyn, when he was drafted, was more known as a shooter, and we saw him break Niagara's rookie record for assists this year. Obviously, he was up there in ice time as well and was given every opportunity to do so. But when you look at, early projections for this team next year, Steven, you look, if Kevin He does come back, if he doesn't make the NHL or the American Hockey League, you look at Ryan Roobroeck going into his draft year, all the eyes on him, eyes on Braidy, Wassilyn, Ethan Czata's drafted. Like, where do you see this core going now? And especially now with the changing landscape of the NCAA eligibility, the retention of players is going to be big for these OHL teams to kind of know that they've got a core that's going to remain there for a couple of seasons. And with Niagara having a 2-year window that they're trying to go for here with the Mem Cup in 27 as a possibility, where do you see this team going forward? They're obviously going to have a new head coach and general manager, as we talked about in the first segment today. But like, where are your thoughts on where this whole core is going and what you think their ceiling could be this next year with all the eyes on those draft eligible guys and the year after?
It's a good core. Like, that's the thing. You're looking at this team, and for the years of just trying to take that next step forward, it was like, okay, what is it that is going to make this team kind of take that next step forward? And we've got that now with Roobroeck and Kevin He and all these guys that are like, this is a very strong and compelling group. So for me, it's always like, how good is your goaltending going to be? How the London Knights in general are a team you never want to play against because of what they can do. But I think this is a team that should, no question about it, take that like next step, like we saw Windsor almost do this year, where they should be competitors. They should be contending every single night, no matter who they're playing with. And they're going to be lethal, especially on the power play. So yeah, like this is an exciting situation for this team where they look like they're ready to go. And I'm wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Roobroeck gets 60 goals next year. We'll see. That's a tall task to do. And I think we were all kind of hoping like Porter Martone would be one of those guys who could kind of reach that mark there. But with Roobroeck, the ceiling's super high there. And that's, and then that isn't counting the guys who are already going to be drafted at that point. So I think it's going to be an exciting season.
87 points, 41 goals in 64 games, Cam.
No, absolutely. And it'll be really exciting to see. Honestly, last year we talked about how Czata, had to be the X factor for the team. And if he put up 50 points, and then we were definitely a playoff team. Again, this was before, the season. That was kind of what we were hoping for. Wassilyn next year, if you mentioned it, if he becomes a goal scorer, what we saw earlier before he got drafted, that would be massive. And again, I think if you combine those two, I think that you're going to see potentially a lot of Ice Dog records challenged, and that we've already seen over the last few years, but even more so. And it's not like the Ice Dogs don't have a lot of impressive alumni over the years either. So it's going to be an exciting year specifically, and next two really. I'm curious to see who they go after in net and things like that, because you alluded to that. Who goes in net is going to be very important. But in terms of the draft prospect, the last thing I do want to ask you, Steven, when it comes to having players in the CHL, but more specifically the OHL, because that kind of gets the biggest highlight, just demographically. Does it cause like national attention? Like, do you think that there will be more eyes on the Ice Dogs, not just in the arena, but just overall because of Roobroeck and maybe Wassilyn if he has a really, really strong season and improves his draft stock tremendously?
Yeah, like I feel like now the CHL in general is going to be a bit more watched, because a lot of cases people are also like, if you're a college hockey fan, you're like, oh, which one of these guys are we going to get in a couple of years?
That's a good point.
It's a really interesting landscape that not enough people really know what's going to happen there. Like, we know Malcolm Spence obviously going into to college.
Crazy.
There's a bunch of other high-end prospects that they haven't announced yet that are also going to be going the same way, and it's going to be really fun. So in case of that, like there's some opportunities to go out there and shine. I guess the one thing that you got to always be worried about is if all the top prospects are leaving, does it start to devalue?
Yeah.
The OHL? And that's what you don't want. You don't want this to be a situation where the BCHL is obviously a bit of a different situation, but the big thing about them was they were attracting all the best college-bound guys.
Yeah.
Now there's no reason to go play there, and the league took a massive hit this year. So I think you don't want that to happen at this point. You want to make sure you're keeping these guys like it's harder. It might be harder to build for the long-term future going forward, where teams this year at the OHL draft, there was a lot of question marks. Like, are we getting these guys just for 2 years? Or are we getting them for the full 4 years? Or like, obviously there's the question about the guys who do 2 years and go straight to the NHL. But what about the guys who 2 years go to college? That's where things get really interesting here. So I think just from a drafting perspective, like, our team's going to start drafting safer picks as opposed to the high end picks, just because you might have a better chance of holding on to those guys longer. Like, teams don't want to have those guys for just 2 years. They want to have those guys for longer, especially not the early part of their 2 years where they're not playing their best. So it's going to be very interesting. But as long as they can keep the core together, like you look at and you look at Roobroeck, you look at Czata, like those are good guys who you can still build around and make a very competitive team. So I think there's going to be a lot of eyes there, and I'm very interested to see where this whole thing kind of shakes out in the next couple of years, because I don't think anyone knows. I know for a fact, like OHL GMs have no idea how this is going to go.
Yeah,
completely new to navigate for sure. The window goes from 4 years, basically. You mentioned it too. I think you're going to see a lot of super teams, or that situation where you got it, where you're going all in is not 3 cracks at it, it's 1 or maybe 2.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like it could be a lot of situations where teams don't know where those players are going to play up until after the draft, because those NHL teams are going to start making the decisions for you. And that's why it's interesting seeing someone like Malcolm Spence commit when he did. It's like, would you not want to wait to see what the NHL team, maybe they'd rather have you in the OHL? We'll see. So it'll be interesting, but like we expect a lot of announcements within the days after the draft is over. And I think that's going to make things wild.
Yeah, like you just don't want it to turn into a U18 league for the best top quality players, right? You want to see them last longer in the OHL. We know that the second round this year had more Americans than ever in the OHL draft, so it was interesting to see. And like you said, the landscape is changing, but you hope that the OHL retains those players. And like Cam mentioned, like as far as keeping those cores together, you might have to go for it a year earlier than you usually would. So I think there's a lot changing in that sense. Steven, I have a quick question just in general about the draft that somebody wanted me to ask you, as far as what you think the value is of, picks between, 7 to 15. Like, what is a first round pick worth now as far as trade value? Because we know, if it's a deeper draft or if it's a weaker draft, that could change things. But, we don't really see the Corey Schneider or Bo Horvat for Corey Schneider type deals where he was basically traded for a top 10 pick there. Like, where do you see the value of picks now? Because it's different than maybe in some other sports. Where do you think it's going? Is it better, more, lesser than maybe it was in the past?
That's a great question. I know, like, every year you see people on Twitter like theorizing that their team might trade down like 2 or 3 picks to get some. Like, that doesn't happen. And I don't see why an NHL team would really want to do that unless the offer is so compelling, or the team that's willing to give up a lot of assets are willing to go in. And
you're passing on Buium.
Well, hey, we know how much fun that you look at that D group last year, and Lev Shunov, I think, gets nowhere as much attention as he probably should for how good of a defenseman he is. But then Buium goes and dominates college. Sam Dickens goes and dominates the OHL. Like, it's a very interesting draft class. This year, like, yeah, it's not a super strong draft, but I still think like it really depends on the team. Like, I know it's kind of feels like a cop-out answer, but it depends on the team, because certain teams might not be willing to wait an extra year to go grab a guy. Like, they might be like, we want to start doing this now. And I'd rather have a player than have a pick. I'd rather have that 100%. that known quantity at this point than like, maybe we'll see what happens. Like, you saw what happened at the draft lottery. The Islanders had no intent, like they had basically no shot at picking first overall. And they pick it first overall. Now they got to change first off, they had to hire a GM, but they had to change their entire outlook of how they were going to handle the draft. So I'd rather draft in the present than trying to trade and do something like that. So it really is team dependent, but like, I'm looking at the bottom end of this top 10. Like, you could get Victor Eklund, who I think is going to be better than his brother. And I know, Cam, you like
no, but I think so too. I think that there could be,
they're totally different players. And fun fact, they actually like play like NHL with each other like all the time.
Really?
Yeah, like even though their time zones are very different in San Jose and Sweden.
That is a very different time zone.
Yeah, they still play a lot of NHL together. Yeah, like so like I'm trying to think of what other teams like
Buffalo at 9.
You're still going to get some good value. Like, Roger McQueen could fall out of the top 10.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most interesting forwards we've seen in a long time, because he's this, like, kind of like Caden Lidstrom last year, where he's got so much skill, but he barely played this year due to back injuries. And we saw what that just did to Caden Lidstrom, where he barely played any games this season. So I think it really kind of depends on where that team is. But right now, like, I would rather have pick a player now than trade it to maybe get a pick next year, because as good as that draft could be, your situation could change. And that's why you never draft for your immediate needs either. You draft best player available in the first round, because your immediate need could change 3 days later in free agency. So you might as well get who you think is going to be the best player down the line. Because the worst case, like Montreal drafted a lot of defensemen in a short span. They were able to
Ryan, but that was always their issue. They did it in the wrong year.
They kept drafting defensemen. They didn't get any superstar defensemen, but they were able to go out and upgrade their current roster and getting Alex Carrier, for example, by trading one of the young defensemen they had in the system. And they still have more. Like Logan Mailloux, I have to assume he's on the trade market at this point because they've got too many young guys, and he's going to be in his third year in the AHL. Like at some point, he's got to make that step forward. So again, it really depends, but I would rather have a pick now and take that asset and see what you could do with it. And you don't see prospects traded immediately way after, but you look at who was the team that drafted? Was it Vegas? Vegas drafted David Edstrom.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was he's on his third different team.
Yeah, third team already. And I still think he's an outstanding prospect, but there's he's a key piece of every trade he's part of.
Yep.
And Vegas easily could have traded that first round pick to get something else at the deadline, but they got him and they've turned that into assets that they use now.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have that than trade the pick.
Last question for me. What is the percentage that Schaefer falls to 2 for the Sharks, which is the ultimate dream scenario?
I don't think the Islanders should pass on him.
I know.
But
they need to score, though.
It's never been more wide open.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, in a perfect world, if Chicago got first overall, I think Schaefer.
They would have. You think same? That's what I said too. I was like, man, let me Chicago win the draft lottery. They take themselves out of the running for McKenna too. It was a whole thing. I was just like, oh, let it be, and it didn't work.
The Islanders are the Islanders are. They need everything. They need every prospect they could possibly have. Like Michael Misa is a good fit, but Schaefer they don't have a young good defenseman coming up. I will say that as good as obviously the whole story about next year, McKenna being the star prospect is incredible, and can't wait to watch him at college next year. But
crazy too.
I will say that if you need a defenseman next year, 6'4" Keaton Verhoff is going to be a star in the NHL. This guy
interesting.
He only started playing goalie, I believe, defense when he was 12 years old. He was a goalie before that. Like, you hear about forwards
really?
Defense. This is a guy who was playing goalie.
That's crazy. Good skater then.
He goes to D, and he's maybe the second best prospect next year, and
overshadowed though, right? Like no one hears about him.
Yeah, the under 18s. Well, see, he played in for West in Victoria, but he was one of the best players at the under 18s overall, and he missed the first few games because he wasn't part of the team at the time. So Keaton Verhoff is going to turn so many. Like I have him, I think, at number 2 or number 3 for my next draft. If you don't get Schaefer, there's an argument that there might be more intrigue in Keaton Verhoff, because of the size and skill factor. Like he had something like 50 points this year as a 6'4" defenseman.
And then my last question for you, Steven, before we let you go, is just the general thoughts on the OHL draft this year. Like, in your opinion, with all the top OHL talent available, the Schaefers, the Misas, the Martones, I know you're very high on guys like Brady Martin, Jake O'Brien, and Kayshawn Aitchison.
My favorite player to watch.
Like your favorite player that you've mentioned a lot throughout the season. Like, where does this OHL draft rank in your mind as far as what we've seen? Like, we look back to possibly the McDavid and Marner draft and how deep that was for the OHL with some top end guys, but to possibly have 5 guys from the OHL go in the top 10. How much do you think that what you've seen from the OHL this year, and things might change with all the NCAA agreement going forward, but how proud are you of the league this year for having a lot of top end talent that you've been able to cover?
Well, it makes it easier for someone based in Ontario to go see these players. And when you look at it, there's a realistic chance that the top 3 players could all come from the same league. Like, that's incredible. You look back when Michigan, I think it was 21, where they had all their really high end prospects like Kent Johnson, Owen Power, Matty Beniers all playing on the same team. Like, that was really cool. With this all being in the same league, that's still such a testament of how good the league is, because there's been a lot of talk. Is the league getting watered down a little bit? When you look at the skill, the high end skill is still there, and part of it is you look at the development levels, the GTHL, the LMHAs, all that stuff. There's so much high end talent coming up, and so it's not a surprise to see all these high end guys at the top of this draft board. So yeah, it's exciting. Schaefer is a future top pairing defenseman. Michael Misa is the guy that if I need to go out and get a goal, that's who I want in the draft. And you look at Porter Martone. People are way too underrating him, man. They're oh, his skating's not great. His skating isn't bad, and that's something you give an NHL coach 5 minutes to figure out for him, and he's going to be a great player. Like you want a Porter Martone on your team. And then I love Brady Martin, because Sean Aitchison, man, that's everything you want in a defenseman. A guy who wants to be as difficult as humanly possible to play against. Like, that's the thing. Like, Schaefer's great. He's got the high end playmaking. Obviously, we know he's going to probably be the first overall pick. Because Sean Aitchison is like exactly what you want. Just he wants to knock guys down. He can score. He can fight. He's fearless. He's not big, but he's fearless. And when you've got a guy like that who's not afraid of anything out there, he's going to be a good player. So a ton of talent. OHL is going to probably have the best draft of anyone this year. And it's interesting because Western Canada kind of had a couple great years. It's Ontario's turn.
We saw Sean Aitchison up close and personal with the Ice Dogs being in the same division and then playing them in the first round of the playoffs. Definitely a hard guy to play against, and Cam can't rave enough about him, even though he was an agitator for this Niagara IceDogs team this year. But Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff, thanks a lot for joining us and giving our fans a lot of great insight, not just on the Ice Dogs, but the OHL Draft coming up. I know it's going to be an exciting time and busy time for you with the Combine and the Draft and everything that goes with that. So great job as always this season, and look forward to having you on, at some point to talk about, the Wassilyn and Roobroeck Draft. That's going to be all eyes on it next season.
It's going to be an exciting year for the Ice Dogs, so I'm looking forward to seeing. I should definitely get down there a couple times. Now that
let's go, buddy.
My family live a little closer there, I might have to go down and see some more games.
Will do.
Absolutely.
So that's going to wrap it up for our Dog Pound Podcast season finale episode right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Thank you to everybody that tuned in live on our YouTube channel and those who listened on your favorite on-demand audio platform. For Cam Halbert and our guest, Stephen Ellis, my name is Brandon Caputo. Enjoy the offseason. We'll talk to you again very soon, and we'll wait to see what the Niagara IceDogs do in this upcoming offseason.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.